This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
I was trying to get it how I live. I want them dead presidents. I want to pull up, head spin, get it, get fly. I got 6 jobs. I don't get tired.
Welcome, everybody, to the debut edition of Two Bad Hombres. My man Vito and the Doc joining you here for this special podcast. Where this idea came from was Vito and I recording the Tigers Talk podcast. Each and every week, we have a good old time talking, and after the recording, we just sit here and we banter back and forth a little bit about things going on socially. We play jokes on each other, we make fun of each other, and through our text conversations back and forth, we just said, you know what? Why don't we just talk to each other about things going on in the world, talk about sports? Let's just do a podcast together where I can also at the same time, you know, give my opinions and not let Vito just talk his way through like he does in the Tigers Talk podcast. So, Vito, welcome, and I'm looking forward to see where this podcast goes. I will take credit for the name, Two Bad Hombres, but first, I want to know why you at first decided that the name Hot Takes was not good, because you seemed to, when I threw that out there for the name of this podcast, kind of, you know, looked at me and was like, can we call it something else besides Hot Takes? And you weren't even close to being flattering at all.
Well, you know what? You can be a bad hombre to a certain extent, but when you're just bad, just a bad human being with bad ideas, then we had to change it up. So not just like you, I thought that was already like taken or too popular, like hot takes. People say hot takes all the time and use that phrase to describe First Take, Undisputed with Skip Bayless, Shannon Sharp. So it kind of has a negative connotation. We're trying to get away from that negative connotation, if you get my drift.
I thought that we'd established when we did the podcast and the Tigers Talk podcast and when you arrived here on the network that I was always going to be right and that whatever I said was just going to go. So you're telling me that the idea to call this podcast Hot Takes was a bad one?
It was lackluster. Just like the Tigers' moves this offseason, which we talked about on Tigers Talk. Check it out. Wednesdays, it drops courtesy of the Detroit Sports Podcast Network and Top Cat Sales. And back to Two Bad Hombres. Doc and I here. Doc, thank you very much for the opportunity once again for this platform. For you, as you said, to express your opinions as well about, you know, pop culture, social issues. And the first one of note is, well, recapping New Year's Eve and what the heck happened for you and I. We've got to talk about that ad nauseum, and maybe we have a guest appearing on this very podcast as well, in Vinny Stubbs, a guy that did the Vinny Stubbs show. Always very creative and interesting stories, to say the least. He said he has a few to share with us as well for this week's Two Bad Hombres podcast. So we'll see if he comes through and is able to share a story or two. But for you, you're the co-host here with me. I want to hear from you. What happened on New Year's Eve?
For me, listen, I'm 37 years old, going on 38, so I got 2 kids, and I hung out with the family. We watched television. We let the kids dance. We played games, things like that. So it was low-key. For me, the enjoyment was being on vacation for the last week. The last week to 10 days was amazing. You know, I think that from my experience, a lot of people shut it down towards the end of the year anyway. They're in vacation mode, and I definitely needed it. I'm ready to go. It really helped me. I took 9 days off from the practice, from all the other work I do, from the podcast. I think we only put out 1 or 2 at best. I went to a lot of games to cover, and for me, it was just a perfect way to end the year, was to take a year-end vacation, and I got a chance to watch a ton of sports, came up with ideas for this network, where to take it in 2017, and so for me, I just absolutely loved the last 2 weeks, and it was just amazing all around. But for you and what you did, you seem to have, you know, a lot more fun than I did, and I want to get to a point that at your age probably shouldn't be happening. How was your New Year's Eve?
Well, very good, and I don't like the premise here about that I shouldn't be, or something shouldn't be happening that I did. Now, I enjoyed myself, had a great, you know, a grand old time, relaxed, and had fun at the same time, and before New Year's Eve, I had something happen, and I think that's the one that you're pinpointing here about somebody throwing up on the side of my vehicle. I wasn't glad. It was late. It was early Friday morning, late Thursday night, however you want to spin it. And actually, a brother of a friend, a guy that actually I like, did the throwing up on the side of my car, and I had to deal with it. Hey, it happens, right?
No,
Stuff
no,
happens.
that's the whole point of it is, what were you guys doing? Were you drinking to excess? Were you guys binge drinking? What were you guys doing?
Well, somebody was. I wasn't. I was the DD. I was the responsible one. I had to deal with the throw up, but guess what? Because of the throw up on the side of my car, I got a free car wash on Friday. So cleaned it all up. I felt all good, all washed up and good to go myself for the rest of Friday, for New Year's Eve on Saturday night. Had a splendid time, and despite that, too.
See, the way I'm looking at it is, okay, you're in your mid-20s, but I think you said you're 24
Well,
years
I'm not
old.
even mid-20s. I'm 23, turning 24 in June of this year. Come on. I'm not mid-20s.
Aren't your compadres that age by now? Don't you think?
No, the guy that did it is a little bit younger. He's still learning the ropes. I had to show him the ropes, teach him a few lessons, slap him around a little bit, and taught him a few things, and I think he's been righted now because of that, Doc.
Exactly. That's the point. And then the other point you make is, listen, if you're going to puke on a car, puke on
Somebody else's, right? Yeah, not my car. Come on, bro. Well, I didn't have the control. He was there by my car. It happened. He wasn't planning on it, and he couldn't control himself. I mean, that's the bad part. You should be able to control yourself. But I've had those moments, too, where I haven't been able to control myself, so it does happen to the best of us, even to the co-host of this show and to the host of Tiger Stock, that is yours truly. So, and I bet you've had some stories in the way past now, but you're a married man doing things responsibly, as we all should all the time. And then New Year's Eve. Let's go right into it. New Year's Eve for me, I spent it in Greektown at a bar/club called Exodus. Very fun time. And we were there until the bar closed down, and had a group of buddies there with me from De La Salle, including one of my really best buds. And we lived it up. We really did. And responsibly. Nobody did anything stupid or got hurt. We had a DD, got us home, and that wrapped up New Year's Eve 2016. It was the best one that I've ever had, actually, too. It really was, because I've had a lot of lackluster ones where we've had plans and plans fall through. These plans this year for 2016 New Year's Eve did not fall through, so I was glad that did occur, that nothing fell through this time around, Doc. Now, what did you actually do with your family then on New Year's Eve?
Obviously, we just played some games. We watched television. We watched some movies. We hung out. We ate, had a good time. And really, when you have a bunch of young kids, my two young daughters, they absolutely love my sister's husband's side of the families. They have a pet now. So they absolutely love going over to the house, playing with the dog, running around. And when you have just 5 or 6 kids that all love each other and they love hanging out, they just run around, play games, pop balloons, chase the dog around. And our job was to just make sure everybody stayed safe and no fighting or nothing like that. But, the best part is just throw on some music, watch the kids, kind of, you live vicariously through them. And it was an enjoyable experience. But the first thing, though, that probably I want to talk to you about is get your reaction to something that went viral, and get your reaction to somebody that was a superstar when I was growing up, and at this point in time has taken a major hit. Mariah Carey showed up, and we watched it, but we had the volume turned down.
Yes, I wasn't watching. I was way too busy doing other stuff, Doc. Sorry.
Exactly. No. We had it, but the volume was low, so we had no idea the firestorm that it created. And so for those of you that don't know, Mariah Carey was slated to be on the Dick Clark productions of New Year's Eve. Every year, Channel 7, and a bunch of other networks, they put on these great New Year's Eve performances, right? So Mariah Carey goes on there, and all of a sudden, and we'll play the video right now, she is totally off. She kind of stops singing. She is not with it musically, and she's just kind of talking over her music, and at some point, she just stops completely. So I want to get your reaction. I'm going to play the video of Mariah Carey, because her PR people are blaming Dick Clark Productions, saying they set her up to fail, and the production staff is like, listen, she had a sound check, and it was fine. This is all on her. Either she showed up either incapacitated.
She was high, drunk, something just off-key. Mariah off-key Carey, wasn't she?
Let's see. Let's play this video and see what happens here and talk about Mariah Carey, because it's already gone viral. People are making fun of her and things like that.
Times Square. Let's hear it right now for Mariah Carey.
Tonight, Mariah Carey's meltdown, the ball drop before the ball drop that began innocently enough.
Should old acquaintance be forgot?
But no one will forget what happened next.
Got my feeling. Just brought me down.
The performance spiraling into disaster.
We can't hear, but I'll just get through the motions, okay?
Mariah Carey standing on stage, not singing.
We didn't have a check for this song, so we'll just say
she dropped the ball, huh?
Carey
dropped the ball before the ball dropped.
To the crowd.
I'm gonna say let the audience sing, okay?
The pop legend directing her dancers on stage.
This foot niggas, you know how to do it.
At one point, speaking to the audience while her vocals could be heard.
I want a holiday too. Can I not have one?
Just when you thought it couldn't get worse, We Belong Together going no better.
'Cause we belong together.
Millions watching on the ABC broadcast.
You just don't get any better.
Carey immediately trending on Twitter, some blasting the star, tweeting, "I tried to sing along to Mariah Carey, but even Mariah Carey can't sing along to Mariah Carey." Others showing their support. Way to handle that with grace, girl. Mariah explaining the performance with an expletive that stuff happens. And tonight in a statement saying her earpiece was not working. Right here you can see her fiddling with it.
Carey's reps say they told the stage manager about the problem, but it was not fixed. We asked at Clark Productions. They have no comment.
What do you think of that, Vito? In front of, this is not only like, just, a mistake in front of a local concert that you're doing with maybe 50 people. This is on the national stage. A lot of people were watching in what turned out to be one of the biggest botches in New Year's Eve history.
Dick Clark's rocking New Year's Eve, and she wasn't rocking, not in the right way at least, and saying that it was sabotaged, her performance. She sabotaged Dick Clark's great production from over the years, and Ryan Seacrest and the show itself, ruining the telecast for millions of Americans. Like you said, it was seen by so many, it went viral. It will be online on YouTube, all these different, outlets for so long. It'll never go away. It's everlasting. So she's got to deal with this, the repercussions of it forever. And you know what? It's on her. I think it's more on her, and we don't know the true story, but it's like, hey, saying that you did something to somebody, like you beat them up, and then you're blaming it on that person for why you beat them up, right? This show, she's blaming it on now the production team, the behind-the-scenes staff. Well, for her lackluster performance, you can't blame it on them. That's not why she had a lackluster performance. She had the lackluster performance because it looks like she didn't have the energy. She wasn't into it. And she had something going on with her mind, something in her, a little bit too much alcohol, maybe some Valiums, something inside her system, because she wasn't the same Mariah Carey and was so disappointing. And luckily, I wasn't even watching anyways. So I lucked out, didn't have to go through that train wreck that was Mariah Carey's performance on New Year's Eve, Doc.
See, the thing that obviously we got a question is, okay, obviously it looked like there were some problems with her ear. Okay, but the idea is, I don't think you're supposed to start talking over the audience.
You got to keep going, keep rolling with it, right? That was the thing that she did wrong, definitely.
Yeah, the idea would be just try to keep your lips moving, try to get into some kind of sync with the music, and then you have more of a solid footing to kind of stand on. When people ask, like, you kind of sounded like you were lip syncing, and you go, you know what, I tried my absolute best. There were issues with my ear, but
she wasn't trying her absolute best, right? That's the difference maker here.
But don't you think, though, if you try to put yourself in Mariah's shoes, and you're having these sound issues at this point in time in her career, she's probably like, seriously, at this point in time, I'm a diva. Everything should be flawless. Like you act.
I was about to say, like you act.
No, like you act.
Like you act. Like you think you're flawless, you're a diva. I don't like divas, though. Maybe I can be a diva, but I don't want anybody else to be a diva around me. So when she's acting like a diva, please.
I'm the diva. You're the one trying to be
I'm like, for me, I would say, excuse me, Mariah, get off the stage, honey. You're not going to do this on New Year's Eve, okay? Go do it somewhere else. Go have your meltdown somewhere else at this point. That's what I would have been saying to her. I think I would have, honestly. I don't have any time for a diva on New Year's Eve, especially. You're supposed to have a rockin' New Year's Eve, a great time, and then she's doing that, and it's all about her on New Year's Eve once again? Please, I have no room for that, Doc.
You think maybe Mariah and Don Lemon were having some fun?
Well, we got to talk about Don Lemon. I think he didn't even realize what was going on with Mariah Carey because he was so blasted. I mean, he said he was lit on the CNN telecast with Anderson Cooper, Kathy Griffin. Kathy Griffin kind of lives it up on there and has some antics herself. Don Lemon, though, was taking shots. I think he was inebriated well before the show even started, perhaps, or right when the show started, I think, on New Year's Eve on CNN. And for me, is that even appropriate? And did CNN plan that for Don Lemon to go through it, to take all the shots, to get his ear pierced? Did you see that part? Got his ear pierced. Was almost taking off his shirt at one point, too, during the telecast. Almost did to get a tattoo. There was a guy that was going to do a tattoo or a piercing. Luckily, his co-host, I think it was Brooke Baldwin is her name from CNN, convinced him to do the ear piercing or not to take off his shirt, so he did the ear piercing. But really? On national TV? I mean, was that appropriate, really, CNN? And did you allow that to happen and convince Don Lemon to go through with that at least a little bit? Because I think that was an act almost put on by CNN and Don Lemon that they had planned for way ahead of time.
Well, you tell me. You watched it. What were you thinking when you watched it? Like, did you feel like it was staged, or do you feel like he legitimately had too much to drink and had a good old time?
Yeah, I mean, he had a few too many, to say the least. Thing is, I think he kind of goes for that. CNN wants him to live it up and kind of wants that on New Year's Eve. That's why they have Kathy Griffin. You're not going to bring in Kathy Griffin unless you're going for the antics, right? The hilarity, all that too. So, I mean, that's the cast they had. So they have to deal with the repercussions of it. And I still remember Don Lemon doing something like this in the past. I think on a previous New Year's Eve telecast, such as last year's New Year's Eve, I think he did something too, where he was getting messed up at least a little bit and sounded like he was slurring his words. So
why are you hating on Don Lemon? Why are you being such a hater?
Well, I should have, right? Because I was having a good time too, but I wasn't on air. I wasn't doing a podcast at that time. And the thing is, then he opened up about his relationship status, wants to get in. He might be ready for a new relationship, something like that, but that he's like a terrible person to date. He even said that on national TV. Now, I wouldn't be talking about my relationship status or anything related to that, but that part, I think, was one of the most funny parts of him being on CNN New Year's Eve. And then also the ear getting pierced. Where the heck did that come from? And, that was a ratings thing. That's to get the attention. That's to get the video of Don Lemon talking with his colleagues to go viral. That was a stunt. I really do think a publicity stunt to have CNN's New Year's Eve telecast go viral. And it definitely did, along with the Mariah Carey train wreck. And that was a train wreck. How do we describe the Don Lemon incident on CNN? Do we describe that as a train wreck or just something that was funny that we all can laugh about now? And even Don Lemon, because look at the repercussions he has suffered. I think nothing to this point. He's not going to, it looks like, even get suspended by CNN. And that's a sign right there, I think, if anything is a sign of the fact that they wanted that to happen, I think that is right there, that nothing's happened to Don Lemon since New Year's Eve.
Yeah, and exactly. And since you've told me this and texted me it, and we're talking about it here on this podcast, I want to see next year what he does, because that's right. It seems like it's a bit now, and it's pretty funny. And now with television, you have the ability to dump things. If you got like a delay, maybe 10, 15 seconds, and if he does something too wild, you cut away and you go to something else. But in television and in podcasting, you got to do something to draw eyes, to draw ears to your project. And so I have no problem with it at all, and I'm really surprised that you do. I think. Well,
it was still better and more fun than watching the Lions. I mean, and he said at one point, really quick, Don Lemon again, when he was getting his ear pierced, he said, or his colleague Brooke Baldwin said, "This is what happens when a lot of tequila happens." She summed it up perfectly, right? But I still don't think I would have that happen, even when taking shots, getting maybe lit a little bit, which is a new term for being drunk, which I don't really even use. But my first question is, have you ever had that moment in your life when you've been inebriated, when you've been so drunk, so lit, that you will do anything almost and even get your ear pierced? Which I've never done, but have you had anything close to that at least, Doc?
Oh, yeah. In future podcasts, we'll get into it. But let's just say that around the holidays, people have Christmas parties. And it wasn't a work Christmas party. It was a family Christmas party that something happened that will live in infamy in my life. And we still talk about it to this day, in that when we go out, I'm given a limit because I did some things that were probably unspeakable, but it was great at the time. And I can't wait to share the story. But yes, I have had those moments, not on a broadcast, not on air, not on television, but when you hear what I did, and I'll tell you probably first when we're done recording today, but what I did was really, cross the line in a lot of different ways. But I survived, and I'm okay now, and it was in my mid-20s as well, but there was circumstances because, and I'll start it with this, is that when you lose weight, your alcohol tolerance changes significantly. And so I'll start it with that, and that's kind of where the story started. And so, but I totally have no problem with Don Lemon. I think it makes great television. I think that we're living in a way too uptight society right now. And look at you, you're like, oh, he shouldn't. You're uptight. You're uptight.
I'm in my mid-20s. You said you can do inexcusable or unexcusable things when you're in your mid-20s. He's not in his mid-20s. But another thing I wanted to say is you said about something unspeakable that you did back in the day. Now, it wasn't getting like a tattoo below your waist or an ear piercing. You look fine. You're a family man. You look great. I don't see any ears pierced. So you didn't do that.
No. It was just things that I said.
Okay.
That were probably not supposed to be said. But hey, it was great at the time. I had the best time. I
It's
don't remember
liquid courage, too, right?
exactly. That's the best way to describe it. But hey, Don Lemon had before we wrap this part of it up, who would you say had the worst night, Don Lemon or Mariah Carey?
Mariah Carey, because he was living it up, having a good old time. Now, doing it on CNN, once again, I don't know about that. But you know what? It's a ratings buzz, like you said, I think that CNN planned for. I think CNN will have him do it once again, and he'll be on New Year's Eve, their telecast again for 2017.
And based upon what you told me, you might pull me away from the Dick Clark show because I usually watch the Channel 7 show. So
But nothing like that is happening on Channel 7. It's a family telecast, really more, that your kids can enjoy as well. And did you stay up past midnight? Were you able to?
No, right at midnight, I kissed the wife, all the kids. The kids stayed up. They were able to stay up past
They have
12.
the energy more than the fathers and mothers. Isn't that something?
So the little 4-year-old, 2-year-old stayed up. We packed him in the car, got him home by 12:20, and then off to bed. I was just too tired.
Yeah. So at least you stayed up until midnight, and the kids probably had a great time. Don't the kids have more fun almost than the parents at times and can have more energy to stay up past midnight than you guys in your mid-30s or whatever
We're chasing
you're in your
after 'em.
mid-30s or 40s. It's a little bit tougher. No offense, Doc.
Yeah,
I would say.
we're chasing after him. So it's one of those things where, when you're in your mid-30s, you're working a lot, you're tired, you just want to go to bed. I've been to the parties. I've run the gamut in that I've gone to New Year's bashes around town and had fun like that too. So throughout the course of this podcast, we'll share all the fun stories and get it out there in terms of, the fun things that we've done. But we'll take our first time out of this podcast. We'll come back and talk about the Celebrity Apprentice. You and I both sat down on Monday and watched it, and we were kind of probably thinking the same things, given our reactions to what it's like to see the Celebrity Apprentice hosted by Arnold Schwarzenegger. Not too sure I'm going to be sticking with it. So stay with us. This is the Two Bad Hombres. This is Doc for the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. We're a network of Detroit sports podcasts dedicated to all things going on around town, the Detroit sports scene, and we greatly appreciate all the support that we've been getting. All we ask is that, hey, if you go shop online, click through the Amazon banner at DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Do all your online shopping, and it's a free way to support the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. You just click through, and when you make an online purchase, it kicks us back a little something, helps keep the lights on in the studio, the microphone's hot. It allows us to create new projects each and every week. And the Two Bad Hombres podcast, we want to try to do this and grow it. And with your support, by visiting DetroitSportsPodcast.com, we can continue to grow the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you for all your support. Visit us at DetroitSportsPodcast.com.
Back on the debut edition of Two Bad Hombres alongside the Doc from Doc and Jock, that is John Macaroon. John, we've got to touch on the Lions a little bit and how we wish we would have been drunk for that game. I mean, like Don Lemon, I think he had it right. And if he was watching that game, he got drunk. We know that because the Lions and keeping the lights on at Ford Field for that game, man, for the duration of that game, man, I wish they would have turned off the lights. And you spoke about how we need support of others to keep on the lights here in the studio. Well, the lights should have been turned off at Ford Field at some point at least, because the Packers, man, towards the end of that game, Rodgers stepped it up and just tore the Lions secondary apart, as an MVP caliber quarterback like Rodgers certainly does.
And you know who I wish potentially would be terminated and hit the chopper?
Who is that?
Head coach Jim Caldwell. And I make no bones about it. I sit here, as a bad hombre, and I say, listen, this is a guy that was brought in here to be a stopgap. I don't think he's going to win a Super Bowl. My take is that he's an every other year coach. Next year in 2017, when I saw what the home and away schedule is going to look like, I go, oh my gosh, it's going to be a super challenge for the Lions to have success in 2017. You were 9 and what were you, let's say, prior to being 9-7? You were 9-4.
Yep.
You had the ability to win one game and win the NFC North. Were you able to do it? No, you weren't able to do it. And it's one of those situations where you did back into the postseason, because if had Washington won, you would have been eliminated. So now you're the 6th seed after being the 2nd seed for a better part of the season. Now you're going out to Seattle. I just think it's not good enough. And simple as that. The performance on Sunday was not good enough. It was one of those things where Aaron Rodgers was the superstar. We needed Matthew Stafford to be the superstar. It's one of those things where Jim Caldwell is doing his job. He's doing a good job, an above-average job.
Above average?
Above average. And that he's gotten the Lions to 2 postseasons in 3 years. He's taken a team this year with talent that you would say is B plus, C, B minus, C plus talent, and you would say, okay. But the question I'm not asking is Jim Caldwell a good coach. The question I'm asking is, do I think that Jim Caldwell will win me a Super Bowl? And the answer is no. And again, I just think that the thing that I tweeted out on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast is his adjustability meter is low. It is what it is. The Lions are going to dink and dunk. They're going to try to keep it close, and they're going to roll with it. I'd say, hey, you could potentially with another coach, maybe even with this talent, you utilize Marvin Jones better. You utilize Golden Tate, Ebron better. Maybe utilize Matthew Stafford better. It's too conservative. So my opinion is Jim Caldwell needs to be let go.
He's one bad hombre that should be gone. And if they don't win a playoff game, which I don't see them winning on the road at Seattle, the 12th man factor, Seattle, how good they are at home, Lions are not going to win on the road. And you were fine with the Lions backing into the playoffs. You made that statement on the latest Doc and Jock podcast. Are you still excited by the fact that they're in, despite the fact that they did back in to get into the postseason?
See, I think you're using the wrong word. I wasn't excited. I said that's
you
what
like you were fine. You were fine. You were accepting of it.
No, what I said was that's what needs to happen. You have to root for it. You guys were like, oh, no, they have to win versus Green Bay, and it has all this meaning. I said, listen, and go back and listen to it from last Thursday. I said my point was you better be rooting for the Giants to win because that's your only way in. And that's the scenario because Washington, had they won, would have put all the pressure on the Lions and they would have been eliminated. So, hey, here we are. I'm not excited. I would rather, Matthew Stafford has made a ton of money, and we're paying the salary. The Lions fans, the fan base is out there buying these $100 tickets and the prices went sky high for the Lions, and we have yet to see a home playoff game.
And it's not going to happen this postseason either. And did you go to the Sunday night game, by the way? You were planning on maybe going?
I tried to get tickets. They were too high, and I just said, save the money. And luckily, my father-in-law, we want to start a tradition of going at least one game a year, but it was broken this year. But we'll try again next year. But he texted me, he's like, yeah, I'm glad we didn't go. It would have been disappointing. The fans were excited, but in the end, what the Lions do, in front of a national TV audience, in front of the second largest crowd at Ford Field, they let you down.
But in the defense of the same old Lions logic and mantra, you know what? You can't blame it totally on that and their past because Stafford was playing hurt. The middle finger injury on his right hand, his throwing hand, he suffered through the last 3 games and all 3 losses, had to play through that, wasn't the same quarterback because of that middle finger on his right hand, his throwing hand once again. Don't you have to blame it a little bit on that? You kind of have to give the Lions a little bit of the benefit of the doubt is what I'm trying to say because of that. And not use the same old Lions logic or mantra because it wasn't totally that this time around for the Lions. It was more that their true MVP all season long, Matt Stafford, was playing hurt. And that's why they had to back into the playoffs. So really, it's not based on the Lions franchise history and all their woes of the past, in my opinion at least.
Listen, Vito, if you're going to keep this bad hombre title, you can't make excuses. Hey, he's out there. He's trying.
But I'm saying that same old Lions logic is a bad thing. You bad hombre. It's a bad thing to use right now. You bad hombre.
It's not the same old Lions. They're a team that's in transition, new general manager, new talent. But in the end, same old results. You still needed to win that game. Point blank. Whatever you want to talk about, the 9-win season, let's just look at the Green Bay game. You had one opportunity to win a football game. You haven't won the division since 1993.
When I was born, by the way. Isn't that something else?
The same old adage. Each team in the league has won the division 3 times. Every team.
The Texans, these expansion franchises of recent memory, teams like that have won division titles before the Lions have. It is
We're going to have a parade. We're going to have a parade when the Lions win the division.
Oh my God, at this point, right? They celebrated the team that won the playoff game in 91, one playoff game. And since 1957, one playoff victory. Sad but true, and the Lions are a bad franchise, you bad hombre. They really are, right?
So one and done.
Caldwell is one bad hombre that has to go.
One and done, right?
I think so. One and done, they're going to lose against Seattle.
You know what else needs to be one and done, Vito? Celebrity Apprentice.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I sat down to watch it, and you and I said, yeah, had you watched the Celebrity Apprentice with Donald Trump? And it had some great moments. There were seasons that had a lot of great celebrities, but this cast, I kind of was okay with it when it first, was released and things like that. So the Celebrity Apprentice season premiere was Monday, 2 hours long, and I just think it's too long. The first thing that I notice is, listen, you don't need to air this reality show for 2 hours, especially on Monday night. There's so much going on. You have sporting events, you got wrestling, there's so much that you can, peek into. There were bowl games. I just think it needs to be 1 hour long and let it go. Let it rip. So it's too long. And then I sat through and watched it, and I was thinking to myself, it just wasn't the same without Donald Trump. I was looking at it, and I was like, it was a little bit corny with Arnold Schwarzenegger with his lines, and when he had the "Hasta la vista, baby" at the end.
It was so funny. Get to the chopper. And then he said at the very beginning to all the contestants, "My job is to terminate you one by one, Arnold Schwarzenegger." That was him. And then he said, "You're terminated." That's his "you're fired" catchphrase.
You're terminated.
How corny, like you said. It really is. This season won't be as good. I don't think he will be as good as the lead boss, as the host. And remember this, Donald J. Trump, the president-elect, still holds executive producer status on this new season of Celebrity Apprentice. Should he hold that status? That's a big debatable topic right now. We have to get into it right here on this debut edition of the Two Bad Hombres podcast.
Why are people having a beef with Donald Trump and what he does? Because he's going to be the president?
Well, and his rhetoric's divisive. I mean, you look at all the bad stuff that he said about different races, females, and it's not good. It's not a good look for the nation, and now he's their president, and then he's got all these responsibilities, supposedly only wants to look at a security briefing here and there, but he has time to make for Celebrity Apprentice as the executive, one of the executive producers. Why does he still hold that status? It's like, why does he still hold his business ties and having his family, his kids now become a part of the White House administration with him, and Ivanka be the first lady, Melania getting off the hook and not even being the first lady acting as that in the White House on a daily basis. Instead, it being his daughter and family and himself included, Donald Trump, that is still having business ties to all the different Trump entities. It's so wrong on so many fronts, and then he doesn't want to make time for the security briefings. Once again, the intel that he has to receive, look over and study and know like the back of his hand. And instead, he's making time, Doc, for his business entities and for Celebrity Apprentice. That's where the problem stems from. It is that he's making time for this, being an executive producer on Celebrity Apprentice, and not willing to really look over the serious issues regarding the nation today. And you got to take time for that as a president-elect, a guy that is going to go through his inauguration in how many days now? On January 20th, I believe, is his inauguration date, when he is sworn in as the next U.S. president. And he is the executive producer of a reality show that I don't think will do good in the ratings, will tank this season as well.
Okay, listen, Vito.
Tell me what you think, though.
No, I'm not a master of television, but I do kind of understand the workings of it, okay? Donald Trump was a significant portion of that show, all right? So when he's executive producer, you don't think he's not getting the idea. I doubt that he's going to spend more than 10 minutes editing, looking at anything. He's just basically given like, hey, this is this is that, da-da-da, if that at all. His role is minimum. His role is just a title to maybe get a check. That's it. And it's whatever profits the show makes, he'll contribute. And for me personally, and everybody's speculating before Donald Trump even takes office. The man is yet to be inaugurated. Everybody is just making their judgments based upon what he's doing, and they're probably fair in their criticisms of what he's doing. But what I'm saying is, why is everybody hating on the fact that, hey, if I came to you, Vito, and said, hey, I want you to be the executive producer of the Doc and Jock podcast. Go about your business. I'm going to put you as the title, give you a couple of schmeckles, and you don't got to do nothing. I'm just going to call you that. You say, no, I'm a journalist.
All right, bro.
I'm okay.
Right.
It's all good. Don't add me a title. It's just a title. He's part of the show.
But his new title is going to be President of the United States. It just looks bad. Don't you think it's a bad look? Not that he really has to do a lot of editing or do anything with the show really on a weekly basis.
Not at all. Donald Trump, what he's done is, he said to everybody, and what everybody is failing to realize is, he doesn't care that he's doing things non-traditionally. He's like, you guys realize that I'm a businessman, a reality star, and I'm the president of the United States, and you all are like, you're not a politician, you're not this, you're not that. He's like, yes, you're making my point for me. Donald Trump does not care that he's not traditional. He does not care that he's a businessman showing up in the White House. He just can say, all he's got to say over and over is, I won an election to be president of the United States. And I don't care if you people think I'm a traditional politician. All you got to do is just judge him on what he does when he gets into the White House. Now, is he going to be an executive producer of other stuff? That's yet to be
Now,
seen.
if he is going to be, come on, you would have to have a problem with that. Come on.
I wouldn't at all.
You wouldn't care if he was the executive producer of like 30-plus reality shows, really.
If he was taking time away from being the president, obviously. But if he's just,
But you don't know what it...
If
what
the
it
specifications
pertains-
are, it's just a title and he has no involvement, why not? If he's just collecting checks by using his name, you realize when you look at Donald Trump's story and you see why his name was on all the buildings, what he did was he made himself a franchise, and that whenever stuff was put, when things had his name on it, they did better. You know, he didn't own all those buildings. What he did was he would lend his name to these buildings. You put the Trump name on it, he'd get a cut, and that was it. So that's what he is. He's a businessman. And he realizes, hey, if I have a financial stake in it and I put my name as the executive producer and the ratings go up a point, that's more money to him. So I don't hate on people that do stuff. But I don't think, and I do have the ability right now to sit here and think that Donald Trump could, balance it out a little bit and that he could be the president of the United States and at the same time slap his name on 50 other projects. That's fine. Because, what is he doing? He's not taking a single penny from the salary because he's all set. He's going to do the job, and I'm going to judge him when he takes office in terms of the policies that he sets, and I'm not going to judge him based upon what other politicians do and things like that. I'm going to judge him on, do the policies help me economically? Do his policies help the people around me and things like that? That's what I'll judge him on. But all this other stuff with his rhetoric and stuff like that, I don't care what words come out of his mouth. The words of a president...
So he can call people whatever he wants to, and you wouldn't care.
I don't care what Obama said. I don't care what Donald Trump says. The words that he uses do not define how I act.
But can he call, let me ask you, if he called your wife a bad name, or your mom, maybe the C word...
Okay, if he came out there and said, Teresa M is a... Okay,
Yeah.
I'd have a problem.
Okay. See, if it affects you and your family, somebody close to you, a loved one, don't you think it affects you largely and that it is wrong? That's the predicament we're in, that if you think that would be wrong, you got to think, I know what I'm trying to do. Yeah. I'm trying to be like the PC cop here. Yeah. But I just think it's too much with Trump with all that. Like, shut your mouth.
Okay.
How about him on Twitter all the time? Really?
Okay, no. So here's the deal. This is how I conceptualize the whole Donald Trump experience. Was it wrong what he said? Yeah. Did it affect me? No. Do I act like that? No. Have I said things that have been classified as locker room talk? Most definitely. But not to that degree, not on television, and not talking...
You haven't been caught on mic. No. That's a different story for a lot of people compared to Trump.
I don't bury my head in the sand and go, oh, guys don't talk like that. Yes, they do. And so, but I don't talk like that now. But when I'm 38 years old and I'm married, do I talk about my wife like that? No. Have I, in my younger 20s, discussed ladies in a certain kind of way? Sure. But, at the same time, I can, say to myself, I respect women. I respect everybody that I come across. But does what Donald Trump says affect me? No. I say this, treat women with respect, treat everybody that you come across with respect, and go about your business. What Donald Trump says has no bearing on anything. Everybody just was looking at it because, they were deciding whether they were going to vote for him or not. But in the end, if you focus on yourself and how you act, if everybody just acts the proper way, everything will be just fine. Everybody needs to relax on Donald Trump. That's it.
Now, you called him a businessman. He is, but let me prefix that with this. Not always the greatest businessman. There are many other more qualified businessmen out there that could have run for president and won, I think, at this point. Now, he won because of his rhetoric. He won because he was so flamboyant, so outlandish. But think about it. He bankrupted how many companies? He did. Remember that. You have to also say that. And he won an election that supposedly now we see more and more stories about it was hacked by the Russians. So it disqualifies him. And he shouldn't have even been eligible to be the Republican candidate.
Vito, you're sounding like somebody that's been influenced by a lot of things. Here's how it goes.
I have been. I see this stuff. I read up on stuff. I think I'm informed, though, too.
Okay, so here's how it goes, okay? Now, the reason why I know this is because now I've started a couple businesses. And now you start to realize, there are advantages to doing things a certain way. So let's say, Vito, I have 500 companies, okay? And 3 of them aren't doing a good job, okay? What do you do when your company doesn't do a good job? You bankrupt the company, okay? Now, what does that mean, though? Is Donald Trump bankrupt? No, he's got money in the bank, okay? So, in essence, all it is simple economics. Hey, he's got companies. Some did well. Some did very well. He's got other companies that did not. And when your company doesn't do well, you fold it and you declare bankruptcy. So, you declare bankruptcy so that you don't have to pay out the things that you owe, period. That's what you do. You would do it. And Donald Trump would tell you to do it. Any business person would tell you to do it. Like, let's say, for example, Vito, we started this podcast business, okay? And we realized, damn, it costs $5,000 a year to run it, okay? So now it's January 4th. We need $5,000. You got it? You got $5,000 to give me to run this podcast company?
Well, not to you.
Okay, so you got $5,000?
Not for anybody, actually.
No, okay, now the next year comes out. Okay, you write it off as a loss. The next year comes. Now it costs $8,000 to run the podcast company. You got
That's why
it?
you're saying bankrupt it right now before I even get in a bigger hole. Is that what you're saying?
Now what you do is you say, okay, my business in terms of the podcast is costing more to run it than it is making.
And I'm earning, yeah.
What you do is you file bankruptcy. That way, that $5,000 is maybe you don't pay $5,000, maybe you pay $500. And you go, okay, that's my liability for this company. I lost money, boom. Or maybe you pay nothing because I've never declared bankruptcy. So far, so good, in that the companies I've started are all profitable.
Let's make it happen in 2017. Let's bankrupt one of your businesses. Let's make America great again that way, like Donald Trump is.
No,
but you're saying that you're giving him the benefit of the doubt that, you know what, you have to kind of go through that at times, right, to get out of a hole and to become better, right?
He's got 500 successful companies. If he's got 3 bad ones, it happens. I mean, you can't say he's a bad businessman.
Okay, but I'll say this. He should have been disqualified to be the president a long time ago. He should have never received the Republican ticket and been the Republican candidate. That's what I'm trying to say. Many more qualified people, not even politicians, but businessmen that could have run.
I completely disagree with you. Vito, what Donald Trump did, whether you agree with him or not, and I'm not telling you what my affiliation is or not, and I didn't vote. I can tell you that. I didn't vote for anybody. I vote for me. That's who I vote for. But in essence, what I'm saying is with Donald Trump, he's the American dream. Anybody in the United States can run for president. What do you mean he's disqualified? He went out there and he stuck his name in the hat and he got through the primaries, which nobody thought he could do. He got the nomination, which was fair and square. And he went and he played the system and he didn't go out to win the popular vote. His strategy was to go through the Rust Belt and to follow the plan of Kellyanne Conway. He followed the plan, and a woman helped him to earn the White House. So he's a guy that hates women. A woman got him into the White House. She's the single reason why, because she planned the strategy of how to get to the Rust Belt. Simple as that. You got a strategy,
so
and you
it takes away from him possibly being a misogynist or anything like that because he had a woman help him out. But I get your point. She really did help him, and you're saying that's where you can say he's not totally sexist, is what you're trying to say, right?
No, the way what
and
I'm
she
saying,
did, and he was smart with this strategy and how he won the White House.
See, to get into the minutia of it, if somebody is a good, kind person, okay, and they say one racist comment, does that make them a racist, or is that a racist comment? Is how I look at it.
How many things are out there now that were unleashed by Mark Burnett, I believe the creator of Celebrity Apprentice? He said he had audio of Trump saying other much worse stuff that, Hillary Clinton and her team wanted released, never was released because of confidentiality stuff. So remember that too. Now I get it. If it's only one thing, you really can't label a person as truly racist. So I get your point with that as well. We can sum it all up here though, right now, to kind of wrap up this edition of the podcast too. You'd be a great member of Trump's administration, and you are one bad hombre, but he's much worse. He's not even a bad hombre. He's something else. That's just my take. Everybody has a different opinion, though. And that's what we'll do each and every single week on this podcast, express our opinions on social issues as well, such as Donald Trump being the executive producer now the president.
Yeah, but do you see, the future president's got a job to do, and now when January 20th comes, it's on him. He's going to have to, hold himself to a high standard. He's got to, make sure that he runs it properly. And there will be people to critique him, and they're going to be fair. But what I'm saying is, if you spend your time worrying about what Donald Trump's doing, that's taking away time from you to, we're sitting here podcasting, trying to make some money. We're not sitting here worried about Donald Trump too much. We're just entertaining ourselves and trying to say, should he be involved in the Celebrity Apprentice? Of course. If he wants to slap his name on the Detroit Sports Podcast, go right ahead. If I will tell you this, if we stick Donald Trump's name on this podcast, and I know it would bring me, a
lot of detractors too.
5 figures.
But money as well.
I wouldn't care about that. I'd care about if his name would bring this network 5 figures, he'd be the executive producer of this network.
It'd be a money grab for you. But I get
it. It's not a money grab. Vito, the definition of business that we're all in, is to make money.
Yeah.
I can't believe you forgot the tenets. You remember what we said when we went to the last Detroit Mercy game together? The 5 tenets of the Detroit Sports Podcast.
Bring them up again to refresh my memory. Yep.
Tenet 1, revenue.
Oh, I know. Actually, I think I know 5 of them. Actually, I know all 5.
Okay. Tenet 2, revenue.
Tenet 3, revenue. Tenet 4,
revenue.
And Tenet 5, revenue. Now, what was Tenet 6?
Revenue.
I think there was something else about Tenet 6, but we were joking about it. Yeah. But I get it. We're in the business of making money. I think was something about me I said jokingly.
Oh, okay. And so,
which we're kind of doing with this podcast network.
Yeah, just to share the quick backstory.
Yeah.
Me and Vito, we cover Oakland basketball and Detroit Mercy basketball. And we were, in between games, there's about maybe a 12, 15-minute lull where you sit around, kind of talk with reporters about the game a little bit, what your thoughts were. And I happened to look at the wall, and Detroit Mercy has now their new kind of slogan and leadership pattern. It had 6 tenets that they wanted to instill, along the lines of leadership, attendance, revenue, stuff like that, unity, stuff like that. And so I looked at it and I said, oh, this is nice. It's a nice big poster, nice material. And I said, you know what, for us, I think we should definitely focus on this revenue tenet that was on the wall. I really like that. And I said, Vito, get on it. Let's make a poster and have it be the Detroit Sports Podcast tenets are going to be revenue. And content would be something, obviously, maybe we can put, in the background. It's kind of important a little bit. But in the end, in any business that you run, you want to make some money. And that's what I'm saying with Donald Trump is that, hey, if he's the guy that goes out there and exclusively focuses on making a buck, and he can do that by slapping his name on anything, go ahead and do it. But you and I are exactly on the same page, being that the Celebrity Apprentice probably should be canceled. It's not that
kind
good.
Of garbage. It's jumped the shark, right? That's a phrase to use. It really has jumped the shark. And we have been Two Bad Hombres on this week's edition of the podcast. That is Two Bad Hombres, and tune in each and every single week. This week's edition will be released Saturday, and we hope to release each and every single episode of Two Bad Hombres on Saturday as well going forward. That is true to say, correct, Doc?
We're going to try to do it, record it during the week, release it on Saturday. So thank you for listening. Tune into the other podcasts on the network. You can find out all the details by going to DetroitSportsPodcast.com. So would you be offended if I had you hail me at the end of every episode? All hail the doc of the podcast. Goodbye.
All hail the doc of the podcast. Goodbye. Is that what you just told me to do?
Yeah.
Really?
Would
really?
You be
all hail the doc of the podcast. Goodbye. Really?
Oh, no. Actually, now thinking about it. All hail the podfather.
I like that. I'll do that. All hail the podfather of the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Goodbye. I think people will do that. And a goodbye to Vinny Stubbs. Where are you, Vinny? Once again, I bet he had a story to share about his New Year's Eve. He probably got drunk. Lived it up. I bet it was that. But all hail the podfather of the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Goodbye, and goodbye from Vito Jerome Churko as well. Hope you enjoyed this debuted edition of Two Bad Hombres. Adios.
I was trying to get it out.